Bullet here. Today's matchup is Satoru Gojo versus Itachi Uchiha. Very interesting matchup, because I think they're both quite similar. So they both come from really prestigious clans, and are considered prodigies within their respective clans. So obviously they're from different verses, Itachi from Naruto, and Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen. Both of them have really special eye techniques. I think that's kind of interesting. Gojo with the 6 eyes, and Itachi with the Sharingan. Both of them have like really broken abilities. I think Gojo slightly more so. But let's say both of them were to fight, who would win? This video won't be like a full-on like power analysis or anything, or even like a character analysis. But I put a lot of effort into these videos, especially editing-wise and research-wise, so it'd be much appreciated if you could sub and like the video. You know what, I'm gonna aim for like 10k subs by the end of this year. I think that's achievable. Alright, cue the intro. We will start with Satoru Gojo, the world's strongest sorcerer. Now whatever I say, there's gonna be people who think he's really broken, or he's like really broken, depending on how you kind of interpret his abilities. And by broken, I mean his abilities are incredibly overpowered. He was born in one of the great 3 families, the Gojo clan. With his immense talent and power, he was capable of mastering an ability called Limitless. He was also born with an ocular ability called the 6 eyes, or in Romanji, the Rokugan. I'm gonna call it the Rokugan, because it rhymes with the Sharingan, and I think it just makes sense, especially in the context of this video. The Rokugan is just like an ocular ability that allows Gojo to master Limitless. Gojo was the first person in 100 years to be born with a Rokugan, but capable of using Limitless. Now let's explain all the abilities Limitless grants him alongside his ocular ability. So the first ability he's granted is Infinity. So his ability functions the same way convergent and divergent sequences function. Just to make it super simple, this is what his ability allows him to do. He takes a finite space between him and his opponent and divides that finite space into like infinite parts. So essentially it creates like an infinite distance between him and his opponent. So technically you can't actually cover that infinite distance with like finite speed, meaning that most people cannot actually physically interact with them. And the scary thing is, this ability is passive, meaning he's always switched on, it's never switched off. So he gets to decide who he's allowed to touch, but his opponent can't touch him back. So you could try and punch him, but you will never reach him. But if he punches you, he can hit you. It sounds really unfair, but that's literally his ability. Now Limitless also allows him to use a curse technique called Blue. Blue essentially allows him to create a negative possibility and bring it into real life. You're probably like, what the fuck is that? Essentially, it's like spatial manipulation. So it should actually ignore normal durability. So no matter how durable you are, it will harm you, unless you specifically have a resistance to this. It causes space to fold in, so it's not gravity, but it functions like gravity. The next curse technique that Limitless grants is Red, the power to repel. So if Blue was capable of creating negative possibility, Red is creating 2 negative possibilities. It pushes it outwards. You can also use the curse technique Purple, and you guessed it, it's a combination of both Red and Blue. Essentially now he has 2 infinities and he's combining them together. It represents the motion of reversal and the fusion of convergence and divergence. So 2 colliding infinities to generate an imaginary mass. The effect takes the opponent out of reality, instantly erasing everything. Basically just deleting anything it touches. It actually has a lot of range, so it's quite difficult to avoid. And now we're on the topic. Speaking about difficult to avoid, his domain expansion, Unlimited Void. So a domain expansion is like a void created in reality that's kind of closed off from the rest of reality. Once you're inside of it, it actually guarantees a hit, because you're literally encountering his attack constantly. You're literally inside of his attack. So as we've actually seen, he takes his blindfold off, touches you, and then traps you inside the concept of infinity. Most characters in fiction can't process this, they don't have infinite processing. So they're literally given an endless stream of information that they can't process, overloading their brains, and paralyzing them. Now how strong is he, like potency wise? How much damage can he inflict, usually? Disregarding his actual hacks. Well, he should easily be able to fight against special grade curses, since he is literally the strongest sorcerer on the planet. And special grade curses are actually stated to require rapid carpet bombing, or at least to be able to combat them. Now rapid carpet bombing is usually calculated around city level, and this is kind of consistent with feats we've seen already. And remember, this is AP, so this isn't his actual destructive capacity. He doesn't have the range to blow up cities or anything, but he can actually fight people who are city level. Anyway, speed, how fast is he? A lot of people try to claim that he's like inaccessible in speed because he existed in a space without time. Now I don't think this applies to his speed. I don't think his ability even applies to his speed. Because even let's say if he was like infinite speed, he would literally be able to move anywhere instantly. So regardless of time, covering any distance, even if that distance is infinite. But that's not the case, he has to actually use certain teleportation techniques to move long distances, and even then that takes time. So his normal combat speed is probably around lightning speed, based on him actually being capable of blitzing characters that can dodge bullets. I think there's actually calcs proving this, links to this will be put down in the description. Guess whose turn it is now? Itachi Uchiha, the prodigy of Uchiha. He became an international criminal after murdering his entire clan, sparing only his younger brother. Now obviously he was like a double agent, but he did join an organization known as the Akatsuki. He has an ocular power called the Sharingan, which he evolved into the Mangekyo Sharingan, a stronger variant. So there's a lot of hacks that Itachi has, mainly being visual jutsu, putting his opponents under illusions, or genjutsu. There's a large variety of different genjutsu and illusions that function very differently to each other. He's considered very intelligent. A lot of people like to meme this, but he had the intelligence of a Hokage at a very young age. So yes, Itachi is very intelligent. Itachi's intelligence is definitely one of the best in the verse, and the Naruto verse is pretty smart, especially when it comes to combat. And you know how it works, he does also have abilities where he can negate durability by essentially using his spirit weapons. Specifically the Tosca Blade, that can actually extend pretty long distances that affect your actual soul, and usually there's no defense against this. Unless you actually have a defense against spiritual attacks, some people can even interact with souls. Itachi also has the Amaterasu that when hit, negates durability and burns you until you turn to ash, and this fire cannot be taken out. As for abilities, that sums it up, so we can move on to stats. How powerful is Itachi? Well, his AP should be about multi-continental. Why do I say this? Well, he is an Akatsuki member, and Akatsuki members are actually stated to be stronger than Jinchuriki. Jinchuriki are stronger than Biju because they're able to focus their energy and become stronger. And we know this is pretty consistent with Itachi since he can literally swap hands with KCM Naruto, who literally fought the version 2 Jinchuriki. And yes, Biju are like multi-continental because they literally vaporize countries. And very consistently, their attack set calculated around multi-continental, and I will link these calculations down in the description. And remember, this is AP, I'm not saying Itachi can actually blow up continents or countries or anything. I'm just saying he can fight characters who can do that. So yeah, this was like base Sharingan Itachi, so he's most likely suppressed. When he uses his Mangekyo Sharingan versus Kabuto, he saves EMS Sasuke several times, and is at least relative to him. In fact, there's even a databook statement stating that for the first time, EMS Sasuke had finally caught up and was Itachi's equal. Now you can argue that EMS Sasuke around this time is close to KCM2's level of power, and that's getting nearer to the planetary levels of power, but I'm just gonna lowball Itachi for now, and say he's like multi-continental, even country level, it doesn't matter, it's above city level, so it's above Gojo. Speed, yay. Here's a cool topic, Itachi doesn't really need an introduction. He's been actually stated light speed several times, verbatim. If we're gonna use better scaling, Itachi can actually easily keep up with characters who can literally blitz the Raikage, who is stated light speed as well. So yeah, he's capable of blitzing people who are light speed, generally. Finally, the conclusion, who wins this fight? Let's compare their stats. Itachi is stronger and faster than Gojo. Itachi is multi-continental and at least light speed, whereas Gojo is city level and lightning speed. Now the difference in power and speed is thousands of times. We do have an issue for Itachi. Gojo literally wears a blindfold, so how is Itachi meant to use his illusions? Now a lot of his stats aren't even relevant. Why? Because Gojo has hacks that allows him to bypass some of his durability, so he can harm them no matter what. The durability of Itachi's body doesn't have a resistance to Gojo's techniques, to Gojo's red, blue or purple, since that's spatial manipulation. The only issue is Gojo's power, limitless. It doesn't grant him any speed feats necessarily, as we established earlier. Since he still has finite speed, he needs teleportation to get to certain places. So to make matters worse, Itachi has a Sharingan. He would be capable of predicting his attacks, and because he's way faster, easily move out the way of them. But let's say Gojo was to use an attack like purple. We know that has a lot of range. However, Itachi can still move out the way of that, since he's a lot faster. Since you know the Raikage literally runs at the speed of light, and he should be relative to that. So because Gojo's attacks cover hundreds of meters, Itachi should easily be able to move hundreds of meters. Now to make matters really bad for Gojo, Itachi has a Yata mirror. So would spatial manipulation even work on intangible souls? Because technically Itachi's shield doesn't have any physical form, yet it's still able to protect him. So the only way Gojo could bypass that is if Itachi stays still, and Gojo's purple encompasses his entire Susanoo. He might be able to injure like anything that his shield isn't touching, but that's the only way. Itachi can also use his spirit weapons in his ribcage form, so he's gonna have a lot of mobility, and he's gonna be really hard to tag. And you won't actually believe this, Itachi can actually stand inside of his mirror, meaning you can't hit him regardless. So Gojo only has one chance of tagging him, and that's somehow trapping him in his domain expansion. Now you can actually escape these voids, however he would have to trap Itachi there in the first place, and I don't know if he's fast enough to do that, but let's say he is somehow. He feeds Itachi's mind an endless amount of information. Very, very, very unfortunately for Gojo, Itachi actually has a resistance to this. Well, more so, Itachi actually has the ability to actually process infinite amounts of information. For example, when he does the Tsukuyomi, he's capable of creating infinite clones within that Tsukuyomi, as stated in the novels. The Tsukuyomi is also stated to be in infinite space, so Itachi needs to be able to process that much amount of information. So yeah, Unlimited Void probably won't work on Itachi either. And if Gojo tries this, he might actually need to take off his blindfold. Now if he takes his blindfold off, Itachi becomes very troublesome, because Itachi has Genjutsu, and he might be able to catch him in a Genjutsu if Gojo does take off his blindfold. And the fight does depend on if Gojo decides to wear his blindfold or his sunglasses, because if he wears sunglasses, Itachi will capture him in the Genjutsu. Okay, let's say Gojo doesn't take his blindfold off and Itachi's Genjutsu can't work. How is Itachi meant to touch him? Because there is an infinite distance between them, remember? Well, this isn't the first time Itachi's fought a blind opponent, technically. He fights Kabuto, who switches off his vision. So how does he capture him in Genjutsu? Well, he uses a certain Uchiha technique called the Izanami. It's a variant of the Izanagi that affects the surrounding reality to trap the opponent in a time loop until they give up and accept their fate. So it would most likely work on Gojo. And just to confirm it would actually work on him, techniques like the Izanagi work in delayed time, or frozen time. Now movement in frozen time is infinite speed. I'm not saying Itachi is infinite speed, just that this ocular ability works on that speed, meaning it can actually cover an infinite distance. Another way Itachi can actually tag Gojo is via using the Amaterasu. Since the Amaterasu doesn't actually need to cover a distance, all Itachi needs to do is see the opponent, and then he can make the Amaterasu appear in the spot that he sees. So on initial activation, the attack does not travel, it just appears on the target. But obviously once it's activated, then he kind of needs to move it around, and that becomes a speed kind of thing where it needs to travel. But on initial activation, it should hit the target. I'll show you a cute diagram that I drew. So that infinite distance doesn't matter, because it doesn't need to travel a distance. Now to give my verdict, Itachi wins if you don't get it by now. Itachi literally has several ways to take him down. So if Gojo has his blindfold, which he might actually need to take off if he uses Unlimited Void, Itachi will trap him in a Genjutsu. If Gojo has his sunglasses on, then Itachi's Genjutsu works. If Gojo still has his blindfold on, Itachi can just use Izanami, or possibly Izanagi as well. Izanagi is actually quite a common jutsu among the Uchiha clan. During the past, we see lots of different Uchiha just spamming it and using it, and Itachi does have knowledge of it, so I wouldn't be surprised if he knows it. It's very likely. Of course, either of his techniques cause blindness, but if Itachi uses it, it's like an insta win. And the most useful thing that Itachi has is probably Amaterasu. That should work regardless of distance. So he just burns Gojo, and Gojo isn't fast enough to react. And Itachi does have pretty decent stamina. I know people like to say he's really bad, but even when he was ill, he was actually able to use several jutsu, fight several people before he actually even got to like Sasuke. Imagine we're using like a healthy Itachi. So his stamina is pretty good, and he can actually use a lot of techniques. We even have characters in Naruto who are literally intangible, right? Or can be intangible for 5 minutes straight, yet they still fear Itachi. For example, Obito. And most likely, the Amaterasu works on intangible beings, if you're using Road to Ninja. But yeah, you probably get the point now. Like, Gojo doesn't really have anything to hit Itachi with. Now, Gojo does actually have techniques to take out Itachi, but Itachi's just too fast, dude. Like, it might be one of those fights where Gojo might take some of them, but Itachi takes most of them. Well, yeah, that's it. Itachi just has the toolkit to take him out. Also, Gojo is smart, but Itachi's probably smarter, just based off feats and analytical feats. Like, Gojo does have a lot, don't get me wrong, but I think Itachi's fighting style just works in this case, because usually Itachi starts off his fights by sending a shadow clone to go fight his opponent, so they can go and analyze their opponent's abilities, and Itachi can come up with a plan. Since Itachi does have infinite processing, he would technically have an infinite amount of time to come up with a plan. If Gojo was literally matched up with any other like normal person, he probably would have beaten them. He's insanely broken. In fact, he's probably more broken than Itachi. It's just that Itachi actually has the toolkit to actually beat him. If you disagree with the outcome, that's fine. Like, you know where to find me. My Discord will be linked down below. A lot of research work went into this video. I literally had to go to the Jujutsu Kaisen Discord, like the main one, and talk to like all of the experts to understand Gojo's abilities completely. So if you want to see more videos like this, then could you please subscribe and like the video? It would be incredibly appreciated by me. And you know what, if you made it this far, thank you for watching the video. This channel's starting to do really well, and I'm quite happy with that. So I'll see you later.